What's going on? What's going on, everybody? It is the only sports podcast. I'm Will. That's Casino over there. He's
And
got
I did see. I know how to do it now. Boom.
He's got very beautiful clips in his hair.
Yeah.
Was this because of your daughter, or are you just trying a new look?
Both. No. So just starting to clean up the house a little bit. We're hosting Easter Sunday at our house, and the house has been a mess because I haven't done pretty much anything since my daughter's birthday last weekend.
Which I
The
was
house
at. I attended.
it was pretty nice. It was actually a perfect day. It was the best day in the middle of a 7-day stretch. It was the best day by far. It's the best day we've had all
Yeah.
year so far. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
no, it's fantastic. But no, I haven't done anything. I was just picking up stuff, and you find these everywhere because the daughter just throws them on the ground. All
Yeah.
these clips. So I was just like, all right, I'm going to start picking them up. The clip just started in the hair, and I forgot about them. No joke, until I tried to put on the headset before I accepted your link for the for the podcast. Yep. And then I was like, oh, I have these in my hair. I don't know how long I've had them in the hair, but it's great. How are you?
I mean, I
today?
love it. It looks fantastic, Casino.
Thank
New
you.
look.
Thank you.
I think you should do this in public.
Yeah, I would, but the wife would divorce me immediately.
But yeah, we are recording on Good Friday, which is how you know it's going to be a good podcast, Casino. Easter is Sunday, and that is why I must say you are an excellent co-host. Excellent.
When did you come up with that one?
Literally when you said you were having Easter Sunday, and then I remembered that it was Easter, and then I just started thinking of that egg pun to say. And you know what? I'm glad I said it. So we are going to, surprisingly, we were doing our little rundown of what's going to happen on the show today. No NFL news. Nothing is really happened in the NFL. There's no Lamar Jackson news, no Rodgers news. The draft we're still waiting on end of this month. So it looks like until we get about the show before the draft, NFL news is going to be pretty cold. So, however, we are talking about NBA, NHL, both their playoffs are starting. But the championship that already did happen in the men's and women college basketball. Let's get into it, Casino.
Oh, also, at the end of the show, we're going to do our recap of the picks that we made for WWE.
Yeah, buddy. But that's also true. WrestleMania was this past weekend. Night 1, fantastic. Night 2, very hit or miss. But we'll get into that at the end of the show. So our predictions, Casino, we both had San Diego State making it to the championship, which they did. You, however, picked Miami. I picked UConn. And then I picked San Diego State to win. You picked Miami. I fucking knew I should have picked UConn. I literally had UConn circled. I crossed it out, and then I circled San Diego State.
Let's start off with the Final Four. Let's go Miami UConn first. Congratulations, you won on that one. I will say this though, I am still 100%. I listened to the last podcast that we did, and you know what? I still feel confident with why I picked them, why I picked Miami to advance. So I mean, in my opinion, but I mean, did UConn come out great? They did. They throttled them by 13. There was only 1 point in this game. Oops, excuse me. Only 1 point in this game where Miami never led, but they did tie at 19. And from there on out, it was just the UConn show. Just blew them out it wasn't even a fun game to watch. That's why we're starting off here. With the Bucks, go for it.
Speaking of UConn, did we undervalue how sneakily, first one of the podcast, how sneakily dominant they were during not only the Big East tournament, where, I mean, they ended up losing to Marquette, but they still blew out Providence. But then when they got into the tournament, they did blowout in the first round, blowout against St. Mary's in the second, blowout in the Sweet 16, blowout in the Elite 8, blowout in the Final Four. Like, I feel like we didn't really give them as much credit as maybe we were giving like San Diego State for their dominance on the other side of the tournament.
I mean, I can see your point there. It's pretty fair. Um, I never was going to say UConn was bad. No, they were blowing out teams. They did right. I don't think I ever said that UConn was bad, but I think you're right. We didn't going back to the conference tournament. I think we people didn't really pay attention to them. They knew they would be good, but I don't
Yeah,
think people gave them the credit that they deserved. But then again, a lot of teams towards the end of the season that did okay in the tournament, when UConn being one of them, obviously winning it, they were striding at the right time. So the focus was kind of on everything. Like good example, Duke. They were really crappy at the beginning of the season, but as they progressed towards the end, the last, obviously they did well in their conference tournament, and then they made a nice little run in the national tournament. Everybody was focused on that was just an example of one team, but a lot of teams were doing that. So I think people are justified for not seeing UConn doing the same thing, and being like the big juggernaut coming out of it, obviously
yeah.
because they won. But I felt I was really excited about this national tournament this year, and I felt a lot of teams were really hitting stride um, going into it. So yeah, well, congrats on you. Also,
Well, no,
congrats on uh, I can never say his I Adama Sanoga. The guy
I
who
ain't gonna
plays for
help you with
UConn.
names.
Yeah, I know. The guy that played for UConn, he had a nice double double against Miami. 21 points, 10 rebounds. Had a good game. Hawkins also had 13. Miami, you only had one player, two players of their starting five that actually got into double digits, with Wong and Miller. Miller did get a double double, but the rest of the team, like one of their starters, got 0 points, didn't do anything. Um, so yeah, UConn pretty much throttled. Not really too much to talk about that game. It was pretty self-explanatory. UConn started off hot. Miami came back, made it a little interesting for a second when they tied it up, and then they just ran away with it.
I
Wasn't
will
even fun.
say I did watch all this game. I will say the first quarter, it looked like just UConn was just blowing them off the floor, right? Like they just clearly looked dominant. In the second quarter, if you look at it, they both scored 35. So Miami was right there with them the second quarter, but obviously they couldn't overcome just how big of a hole they dug in the first quarter. But I was impressed with Miami coming out of halftime and how, like, you could see they weren't just like, clearly UConn is the better team, but they didn't roll over for them, and they were still like, well, at least make this a game. And that's crazy that even still making it a game, quote unquote, they still end up getting blown out by what, almost 20 points. Like,
Right. I mean, the two big factors of this, though, were in the rebounds. UConn out rebounded them by 9, and mostly off of the defensive side. So they weren't giving up any second opportunities, which Miami needed, because Miami only was 32% from the field for the entire game, which UConn was almost 50. They're at 49. So those are big things. Miami just couldn't put the ball in the bucket, and they did not give themselves any offensive rebounds to be able to get second looks that they desperately needed. So that was your big outcome of the game. Um, but so I'm good with that. Moving over to the other game, this was the real talking point of that Final Four. What a game!
dude,
Um,
what a game. What
this,
a
so the
shot at
this
the
so
end.
this yeah, the spread, for those who don't know, was -2.5 for San Diego. Guess what? FAU covered. They only
Oh,
lost by a point. This game was absolutely phenomenal. And the crazy thing, though, and I feel really bad, was FAU. They were ahead. So the first half, it was a nice little back and forth. They were pretty close. FAU did jump out a little bit at halftime, but before going into the second half, it was 40-33. So 7 points, not too far, but it made it look good. Um, but then rolling on into the second, it was pretty much FAU all the way up till, I don't know, roughly like 5 minutes left to go in the game, when SDSU, I can actually pull that up when they actually tied. 4:28 left to go in the game. Not Miami, San Diego State ties it at 65. And then it was just a punch back and forth kind of thing. And it comes down to where FAU, they had about 12 seconds left to go on the clock. They bring it on down. They're currently up one at that point and tries to go for a nice layup. He gets rejected, doesn't go in. All right, fine. You're still up. You're still up two. No, at that point, you're still up one with 6 seconds to go. Just stop them from coming down and getting any look on anything. Don't foul, definitely. FAU played that really, really well coming on down. But then you have Butler, really good inside jump shot. Oh, nope. So sorry. Yep. Butler, very good inside jump shot. He had only 7 points going into that final shot, and he just does a really nice turn. Everybody's like, time's running down, time's running down. Why isn't he passing the ball? He's covered, he's
Yeah.
covered, he's covered. And then about with 3 seconds to go, he makes a really good move to break away from the defender and makes a nice little inside jumper, sinks it. SDSU wins by 1. Heartbreaker for FAU. Just buzzer beater, heartbreaker. It really felt bad for them. I wanted the Owls to make it, obviously, for the story. But I said it the podcast before. I was really happy that they didn't just throw FAU under the odds and just be like, SDSU number 1 defense. They're just going to blow them out. They're going to
Yeah.
crush them. FAU, they showed why they made the Final Four and why they could have made the national championship. Was they played phenomenal. They SDSU, they just had that better poise of coming back, playing very strong defense, especially as you saw that last block before Butler came down and scored. So hats off to him. Bradley had 21 points. That team is just a big, massive team. They're very strong. So yeah, that game was a lot of fun.
I will say, on the last podcast, we were talking about these two games. I really thought if there was going to be a blowout, it was going to be San Diego State against FAU.
Right.
But I mean,
True.
watching that game and looking at the stats afterwards, they were almost evenly matched, like across the board. Like, I think
right.
when you're looking at how the game played out, I mean, free throw percentage, FAU had about 20% higher free throw makes. They had 16 out of 21. San Diego State at 13 out of 22. Literally everything else, like assists, they're within 2. Steals, they're within 3. Turnovers, they're within 2. Everything else in the entire game, even rebounds offensively and defensively, they're all within 3 of each other. So
Right.
I've never, I wouldn't say never, but it was shocking to me how just well matched these two teams were. And I mean, it was a 1-point game, but yeah,
And
it didn't seem like
everybody that stepped foot on the court, except for one bench player for SDSU, had buckets,
yeah,
which was awesome. Awesome to see. Like Ladie came in off the bench for San Diego State, and he had 12 points, 6 rebounds, played very well. But then over on the FAU side, like their bench came out and all had rebounds and points. All 4 of the players that came off the bench for them. But their big star was Martin with 26 points, 7 rebounds. He was absolutely phenomenal.
yeah.
This game was absolutely just a joy to watch. This is going to go down as a classic. And yeah, both teams trying to fight for their first time at the national tournament, and it did not disappoint.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I was more shocked by how similar the two teams played because, like you just said, Martin went off for Florida Atlantic, Johnson went off for San Diego State, and then they all kind of just had the rest of the team kind of just contribute for a couple baskets here and there. Like the way these two teams played with each other, their style of play, and then how it came down to the end, like it was.
Well,
I was shocked at how evenly matched they were.
Right. And I mean, as you're talking about, as you're talking about the stats being pretty evenly matched, rebounds 34, 35, pretty much right on. Field goal percentage, overall field goal percentage, 44 for FAU and 43.9. Like they were separated by 0.3 on their field goals. 3-pointers, it was 40 and 50. So that wasn't a big thing. But also the free throws. San Diego State did get to the line a lot. They had 22 attempts. They only made 13, but FAU had 21 attempts and only made 16. So there's your makeup for FAU not hitting a couple more threes. Well, actually, they hit the same amount of threes, but San Diego shot less on the threes. But yeah, the game was absolutely just a joy to watch. Absolute joy to watch. They both had 17 fouls, 2 blocks. They were separated by 1 on the turnovers. Assists were pretty much the same. Like this game was so fantastic on both teams being pretty much the exact same.
Yeah.
Yeah, loved it.
Now, so
Um,
coming out of these 2 games on, what is it? I believe these happened Saturday, correct?
mhm.
Or were these Friday games? No,
These
these were
were
Saturday games because the championship was Monday.
Yep.
So both these games were Saturday. So now coming out of these games, obviously we recorded our last episode on Friday. So we picked both the final 4 and then who you thought would go to the championship. You and I had San Diego State and UConn going to the championship, and then I picked the wrong victor in the end. But you had San Diego State and then Miami. So after you see the San Diego State close win against FAU, and then you see the UConn blowout of Miami. Did you, in your mind, think San Diego State has this, or were you like, I'm picking UConn because UConn beat my team?
Yeah, because I UConn. I had UConn then. After what they did to Miami, for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what I wanted. I did personally didn't want SDSU because I'm a true running rebel. Everybody's like, "Oh, they're Mountain West. You should cheer for them." No, no. But no, UConn. They were my pick. I had said that too. I was like, if UConn does end up beating Miami and ends up in, that would be the team that I would be okay with winning outside of FAU, winning the
Yeah.
national tournament. That's who I would want to win. So they did. I know that they've won many national tournaments in the past. Their last one, I think, was against Butler. I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that, whatever it was.
Yeah. I
I'm
think they
fine with
had
that,
5. I think this was their 5th one in school
something like
history.
that. So yeah, I just know they've won before. I was okay with it. But yeah, they absolutely throttled. I really don't have much to say about the
I mean, well,
national
that game
championship
was shit.
game. Yeah, I mean
That game was
SDSU.
almost, I mean, within 5 minutes of the game, I was messaging you being like, I knew I should have fucking picked UConn. Like, they just look like a clearly superior team to San Diego State almost from the get-go. Like, it was there was not one point in that game where I was like, even when it got slightly close, not one point in that game was I ever like San Diego State has a chance.
Oh,
UConn
I
was
didn't.
just
I
doing
still
whatever
never
they
thought
wanted.
SDSU was gonna. I never thought they were gonna win, but I was like, oh, this is actually going to be an interesting last 4 minutes of the game when they brought it back within 5. I thought it was going to be a fun remaining end of the game. Still, UConn pulling out on top, but as soon as they got back within 5, UConn was like, not going to do that, and they scored like a couple buckets immediately and stretched it back out to almost 10 points, and then it was turning into the foul situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, really not much to talk about on
No.
that end. But I do want to talk about going back to over the weekend on Friday night. Not Friday night, Sunday
Yeah.
night. No, I'm talking about Sunday night. We didn't talk about this one. Sunday
Well,
night,
we didn't
we
talk
had
about the Friday
women's
ones
finals.
either.
What's up?
For the women's, are we moving over to
Oh, we didn't
women's?
talk about. Oh yeah, we didn't talk about that one. Yeah, because we did the podcast the morning of.
Yeah.
Um, just like I said, the one person that I thought could beat South Carolina, Caitlin Clark, she did it again. Another 41-point game, beat them by 4, and then you had LSU beat number 1 seeded Virginia Tech in a pretty good game. Both these games were absolutely fun to watch. I know you
I
weren't watching probably many of them, or either one of them,
For the
but
first time in my life, I watched a full women's basketball. I watched 2 full women's basketball games in my life. The first one was Iowa, South Carolina. And shockingly, it was because at my work, we
They
have
just
two
had it on.
TVs there. I put one on one TV, and then I can't remember what, there was an NBA game on one of the other TVs. And
Uh,
multiple
yeah,
people I worked with and multiple customers asked me to turn both TVs onto the women's
because it's
South
good.
Carolina.
It got
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. No,
It
and
got
I
good.
watched the whole thing. That was a great game. Like
Oh
great
yeah.
game.
And then so moving on from that, then you get into the Sunday night, and I honestly thought Iowa was going to pull this off. However, there was a different circumstance there. Oh, come on. Why? I hate this sometimes on this app. It just doesn't give you all the. I'm going to go to ESPN. Caitlin Clark still had a good game. She'd still scored over 30 points,
Yeah,
but
she did
Paige,
30 points, 8 assists, 2 rebounds, played 35 minutes.
thank
So,
you. We've been trying to avoid this where we're a little more prepared on this, but I'm getting held up
here, I
because
got it
I
right
had
here.
it pulled up. Sorry.
So, 3 seed LSU beat 2 seed Iowa 102-85. On Iowa, it was pretty much Clark, and then the next closest 3 people to her had 13, 12, 13. LSU, on the other hand, you had Williams with 20, Reese with 15, Morris with 21, Carson with 22, and then LSU just this is the second game that I watched all of because it is nice to know men or women's sports, the officiating will always be absolute dog shit. Like the
Hmm.
officiating in this game was on par with some of the worst officiated, especially championship games I've ever seen in my life. Like,
I would agree with
why
that.
the fuck in all sports is the officiating the absolute worst in the most important games? Like, is it because you just don't give a shit when it's bad officiating in like less important games and you care so much more when it's championship games? I wasn't a fan of either of these teams. Like, I'm not even on the men's side, I'm not really into LSU or Iowa just as schools or programs. But as not a fan of either, I could uh, what is it? Side with either team, talking about how shit like their
I
team's
mean,
calls were. It was just
granted, though,
ugh.
it was still pretty even on that. It was 18 fouls for LSU and 19 for Iowa. The big issue, though, was Iowa had 2 players foul out, which
Yeah.
was a big thing. But I want to talk about this. And what's your take on Reese doing the whole I got the ring thing? I got the ring thing to Caitlin
I'm
Clark.
fine with it.
Me too.
Her ascot. I mean, if the second you win or you're kicking the other team's ass, like they had the chance to stop you. They had the chance to win. Now
Right.
you open yourself up to whatever fucking the other team wants to say.
So here was my take on it because people asked me. I was obviously at the bar. They're like, "Ooh, what's your take on that controversy going with Reese and Clark?" And I was like, "I'm fine with it." The only thing that I didn't like was, and this is more an officiating thing, was Reese was doing it still with like 5 minutes to go and was getting in her face.
Yeah.
You can't. That's taunting. That should be a technical foul. You can't do that in the middle of a game. If it was like 30 seconds and you're doing it, the game's already over. You're up by X amount of points, 15 points, then you're fine. But she was still doing it with like 5 minutes to go. There should have been, in my opinion, some sort of taunting technical foul on that. That's my
Yeah.
opinion,
No,
obviously.
no, I agree. I agree with you. I think
But
the only issue people had with it, well, obviously, now this is what I hate about like the culture at large is when shit like this happens. Because obviously, like, as sports fans, we've seen this kind of shit all the time, right? We watch so much football and NBA. I fucking love the I believe it was Patrick Beverly like a week ago when LeBron James fucked up, or I think he blocked a shot or something, and he was doing like the you're too small on the court and like
yeah,
taunting him. I love all that stuff. I always like the Tyreek
Okay.
Hill like peace sign when he outruns people. It's sports. It's not like
Okay.
wrestling or
All right.
movies where it's planned,
That's
right?
fine. You do it. So you do it once, like during something. That's fine.
Well,
But it
no,
was the consistent thing.
I'm saying with her thing is there were so many people comparing what Clark did in the previous game where she just did like the John Cena, you can't see me, or she like
Oh no,
waved
she was
off
taunting. Yes,
the
Clark
woman at the
did the
three
same
point
thing.
line. Yeah. Which, but then again, because our culture's so fucking dumb, it becomes like a whole thing of like, this is a black player getting shit on. This is a white player getting okay, which again, we don't give a shit about, right? I'm fine with all of it. Do all of it. I agree with you. The length of time she went to do it in the middle of a live game, that is one of those things where I don't know if she should have got a
She should have
technical, but maybe
at least
you
talked to,
get,
just be like, hey,
yeah,
like you've done this for like 2 minutes straight now after every rundown. And you know what the funny thing is, though, is Reese wasn't even the star of that game for LSU.
yeah,
It was Jasmine Carson. She was 7 for 8 for field goals and 5 for 6 from behind the arc. She had 22 points. She led her team with points. She was the best player on that team with a rebound and assist, 100%. And she came off the bench. So,
yeah.
like, Reese, you stole the highlight, or you stole the spotlight over Carson. She had the great game, but I found it funny. And
I
people are
did
like,
too. I laughed
and
when I saw it.
people were like, "Oh, well, that's crazy to do." And I was like, "Well, Clark was doing the same thing as you were saying, the John Cena thing, going
The
up after
waving
the
off
game,
the
like to the
3 point
fans,
line.
like, look at me, I'm killer."
Yeah.
But yeah,
This this shit is all good for sports, especially college basketball, especially women's college basketball, because now you have what you have a great team in LSU with one notable moment being, they won the championship and the taunting and all that kind of shit. So that makes headlines. Then you have Clark, who is doing shit we've never seen before in college basketball, period, right? Like she's breaking records on the men's and women's side. So this is good for women's college basketball. But
it's just good for
again,
basketball.
yeah. Well, good for college basketball, especially because of
Mhm.
how and this is my question to you, Casino. For men's and women's college basketball, is the way the rules are set up where I believe in women's college basketball, you have to play 3 years in college before you can go to the pros of the WNBA. Whereas NBA used to be 1 year. Now they got rid of it. You have a bunch of guys like Wembenyama just like playing in the G League or overseas. So they're not even going into college basketball. Do you think maybe at the moment or potentially in the future, college basketball on the women's side can be more popular and a better product than college basketball on the men's side?
I would say better product, yes. I could see that, better product for sure. There's just as the years go on, and things being more accessible for women's sports as you're going on, and the players getting better and better as years go on, I can see the product being better because you're going to actually have the superstars of the uh, NC women's NCAA, and then the high school players going straight into the G League or overseas or whatever for the NBA. Yeah, the issue is are they going to be able to get the rights, the TV rights, to be more popular? So, like, I don't
That's a
think
good
it's
point.
the question of
Yeah.
being like, is it going to be more popular? I don't think so because the vast majority of people are still going to want to watch the men's sport play. But will the better product, better games? I mean, shit, like we said, the South Carolina Iowa game was just one of the better college basketball games I've watched
Yeah.
all season in
Especially
just
the
general.
story, the electricity of that environment, like
Oh
the
yeah,
storylines going into it. Like, yeah,
no,
that was all
I can
fantastic.
definitely see it. I could definitely see the product being better, but not any more popular than it is now. Maybe a little bit, but you still have to get
Well,
your eyes. Still have to get eyes on it, and people are just not going to watch it as
well,
much as they should.
interestingly enough, On the men's side, the final four was we had San Diego State University, FAU, Miami, UConn. Out of those four, what maybe UConn would be the closest to a basketball powerhouse, right?
Oh,
Like in
right.
terms
No,
of like appeal, right? But on
100%.
the on the women's side, I mean, you had what? You had LSU, Iowa, both pretty big schools. Like, I mean, most people would know who don't know college football or college basketball or just colleges in general. Most of them would know what LSU is, right? Like, my mom would recognize LSU, right? I feel like to a lesser extent,
Go
Iowa, but
Tigers.
still Iowa. And
Sorry.
then,
Anytime
what is
LSU's
it?
go Tigers.
And then South Carolina, Virginia Tech are kind of in that same, like, I don't know if you would really know those colleges, but still, the two teams in the finals, I feel like were more recognizable to people outside of the sports world than especially San Diego State and UConn. Like, so I don't know. I don't know, Casino. It was
Fair
a
enough.
good sports weekend for college basketball because
All
that,
right.
I mean,
I mean, we
that
just talked 30
Iowa,
minutes on that.
yeah, Iowa, South Carolina, and San Diego State, FAU. Those were fucking great games.
Oh, yeah.
Great games. Ugh. But now that we've talked about college basketball, it's time to talk about professional basketball, Casino, because
Great segue.
thank you so much. The
Mhm.
NBA at the moment, I believe their last games, and I will double check this right now, their last games are Sunday, and then the playoff starts with the play-in tournament. Yes, it is Sunday. Last game is, I believe, at noon. And then I don't know when the play-in tournament starts. I'm looking right now. I don't know. I don't know. But at the moment, we're going to talk about what the play-in tournaments. I think it starts on Thursday, maybe Wednesday, Thursday for the play-in tournament itself, but I can't find it anywhere here. I know here we go. Game the game ones of the tournament start Tuesday, April 11th. So the play-in tournament at the moment has these potential matchups. So obviously the play-in tournament has the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th seed playing each other to get basically into the playoffs. So at the
Okay.
moment, for the Eastern Conference Championship or for the Eastern Conference play-in tournament, it would be the number 10 Chicago Bulls at the number 9 Toronto Raptors, and then the number 8 Atlanta Hawks at the number 7 Miami Heat. On the West side, we would have number 10 Oklahoma City Thunder at the number 9 Minnesota Timberwolves, and then the number 8 New Orleans Pelicans at the number 7 Los Angeles Lakers. So uh, in the Eastern Conference, however, the Brooklyn Nets are the 6th seed, and they are 1.5 games ahead of the 7th seed, with I believe they have 3 games left. However, on the West side, the
West Side.
Clippers
Sorry.
the Clippers are the 5th seed with only 1 game ahead of the 7th. So the Eastern games kind of feel set, like the Eastern Conference, that is. Those seeds kind of feel set. The top 3 seeds are definitely set. It's going to be Bucks, Celtics, Sixers, and then could a couple of the teams beneath them switch? Possibly, but I don't believe so. I believe the East is set. The West, however, the Lakers are surging. The Clippers beat the Lakers, but I feel like they haven't looked good besides that game. The Warriors are always a liability when they go on the road. So the Mavericks tonight are trying to get into the play-in tournament in a must-win game, and like all 5 of their starters are out, or I believe 4 of their starters are out. So it looks like the Mavericks just don't give a shit anymore. But uh so the
A lot
games
of
that
talking. A lot of talking.
yeah, the games that matter the most to the play-in tournament within the next 3 days, right? Because the season ends on Sunday. In terms of seeding, Knicks Pelicans tonight. So these are the Friday games. Knicks Pelicans, Bulls Mavericks, Suns Lakers. because again, Lakers win, they could potentially be the 6th seed and avoid the play-in tournament and just go straight into the playoffs. Which, if you're as injury prone as AD and as old and kind of beat up as LeBron James has looked at
But he's still
times, like
playing well. Yeah, you
you
need
want to
you need
avoid
the
those
week.
extra games. Yeah. So
100% you do. I mean, here,
Saturday,
let me
there's
ask you this. Do you
nothing.
still consider that? Do you still consider the play in the playoffs? I do.
I do as well. I do too.
So
I
like
don't know
with the
how.
college ball when they added the 2 games of the 4 extra teams and they're like it's the play-in games to get into the 64 and I'm like they still got
These are
called up to the
playoff
dance.
games.
Like it's
Yeah.
still a fucking playoff.
I like
Sorry.
I like the
Ugh.
play in games. I like the play in tournament. And I like that it hasn't necessarily stopped tanking in the NBA, but it's kind of made those teams that are like right on the verge of should we tank or should we try to get the last playoff spot? Now it gives them
Well,
more incentive to try to just get
this
into the
is
play in
my
tournament.
I see what you're saying, but this is my take on, and this is, I know you disagree with this, but I feel like with doing that, I hate tanking in general. Like any team
Yeah.
that one is tanking on purpose, and you could tell they should be 100% fined. They should.
Uh-huh.
They should. So I don't like that, but I think there's 15 teams in each conference, and 2/3 of the teams make it in every conference. I don't like that. I think it's too many. I've told you that.
I
You've
I agree
defended
with
it.
you.
Oh, whoa! You're changing your tune on that because I remember in our group chat with all the guys at one time, I was just like, "What's the point? Like, it doesn't matter until the playoffs because I mean everybody says that, but it doesn't matter in the playoffs because everybody makes the playoffs. I mean, it's
Mhm.
2/3 of the teams in the NBA make the postseason. This is what makes, and this is why we've talked about it. I don't, or in the NFL, I like when it's smaller teams. When they added this extra wild card, I didn't like it.
I don't like
Yes,
that either. I
it
agree.
almost gave my team a shot in the playoffs, but it's pointless. It's pointless in my you're either a good team or you're not a good team, and this will keep games exciting later on down. I guess you could say the same thing with like the play-ins, like they're trying, but I don't like that. I'd rather teams really fight throughout the regular season to make regular season games interesting, and you're not just going to go pay money to maybe see your players because they have the choice of not playing pretty much the day of. I don't like that. It makes the entire regular. One of the reasons why I don't like NBA as much as you do. I'll still watch it, but it takes away the entire regular season. I can't. I just can't stand it.
Now, I will so I don't like because at the moment, you're right. At the moment, in the Eastern Conference standings, you pretty much have 15 teams there. 10 of them are vying for a playoff spot because the Bulls at number 10, if they win the play-in tournament, they're in. But it's single elimination games. It's not a best of series. So I feel like that makes it more exciting and makes it so uh it makes it more exciting, but it also makes it where it's kind of like the NFL playoffs where not the best team wins. It's kind of just the team that was hot at that right moment, right? Because we've seen, especially in the NFL, we've seen a team be a wild card team and then just blow through the first and second seed and then win the playoffs. I'm thinking of like the Giants and shit like that, right? But where I will defend it is it does get more fan bases it gives more fan bases hope and keeps them watching longer because their team has a better chance than if we just said, okay, first top 6 seeds, top 7 seeds in each conference, you go to the playoffs. And then I feel like that would make the regular season
Okay,
less
well, I mean,
competitive.
I see what you're saying there, but then I'll I'll back up my reasoning with this is what so like the NHL, you have half the teams in every conference go. It's eight
Yes.
of the 16 make it. But you know what? I like it's there's what I like about it is it's so cutthroat in the NHL that compared, in my opinion, to the NBA that I don't know. I just like how it plays out better.
So
I don't
here,
know.
so for the NBA, now I will say this argument other years, you would have more weight to your argument, right? Because usually there's such a chasm between the elite teams in this league in terms of like the ones at the bottom. However, this year, there's not a great team. There is a bunch of good teams, and there's a bunch of teams that are like right at
Rock
the
the boat
cusp.
teams.
Yes, a lot of teams that are right on the cusp of, if a couple games would have went differently, they're either one of the better teams or one of the worst, right?
Yeah.
So this year, for example, in the Eastern Conference, you have the three clear standouts in the East, which are Bucks, Celtics, Sixers, right? That's been like that for minimum since November, right? Where these three have been the elite in the East. Now, you get from 4 to 10, and you're starting with the Cavaliers at 51. So, you know what? I'll throw them in with the Sixers, Celtics, Bucks because they're the 450 win teams. So, when you get to 5, between 5 and 10, only 9 games separate these teams in terms of seeding. So you have the Knicks at 47, but then when you get to the Nets, Heat, Hawks, Raptors, Bulls, only 5 games separate them. So again, one buzzer beater here, one missed shot there. The difference between Chicago being 38 and 46 and, or I'm sorry, 38 and 42 and being 44 and 36 is literally 4 games to go from the 10th seed to the 6th seed. So that's why I am a fan and in favor of the play-in tournament, because not all the teams get in there, but right below the Bulls, you have the Pacers, who have lost 4 more games. They've their record is 34 and 46. Then you have the Wizards, Magic, Hornets, Pistons. So you have a clear divide from the teams that are good and the teams that are bad, right? And that divide, almost in both conferences, it luckily stops right at like 10. And then I think in the West, it stops at 11. So this year, I agree with you with other years, but this year might be the outlier and the example that you would use to counter the argument of too many teams get in the playoffs. Because this year, it's
All
like
right.
we have a bunch of
That's
average teams. We're putting them in the play-in tournament, and then one of those average teams is going to catch fire, be, semi hot, and then be like, maybe they can upset somebody in the second round, because like you, I count the play-in as the playoffs, right? So it's like, if the Bulls come out of this and then they're playing, what, I believe they would be playing the second seed, so they'd be playing the Celtics. Like, if the Bulls just go roughshod through the play-in tournament, and then it's like they're playing the Bulls in a 5-game series, what if that series is 2-2, right? If you're going into the fifth game and you're like, hey, maybe the Bulls have it. And I just think that's a real, especially I'm using the East as an example, but especially in the West, like, if the Lakers are in the play-in tournament, and currently at the moment they're 7, so they could be, couldn't be. But let's say it's the Mavericks. The Mavericks are the 10th team. They win the play-in tournament, and then they're playing the Grizzlies, and it's the Mavericks Grizzlies in a 5-game series. Would anybody be shocked if all of a sudden Luka and Kyrie just go off for 3 out of the 5 games and beat them? Like, I think there's examples and precedents only specifically this year to back up like the play-in tournament is a great idea. It adds more fans because more teams are in it, and it makes you a fan longer because we both love the NFL, and we both love the NBA, and we both love Major League Baseball, all the professional sports, but you love those sports more when your team is in the mix of it longer, right?
that's
Like,
all right.
in my
But
lifetime,
I guess Okay, I get what you're saying. I guess where I'm at is I two things. I just made like NHL better than NBA. That might be just the main thing about it.
Yes.
But also I like hockey player mentality over the NBA mentality because they're always fighting. No team is ever noticeably tanking in NHL. Maybe I just like that better. I like competitive play. I'd much rather see that than, players like, oh well, I'm not gonna play. I've tweaked my hammy. I tweaked my hammy.
Well,
I'm not gonna go play. Um, and
I
that's because they're
honestly
trying to tank. I honestly I don't like the whole tanking thing, and I see it more visibly. I see it more in the NBA than I do the NHL.
I
Um,
think
that's my take on why. One reason
yeah.
why I might like it better.
I do think tanking has become less of a topic in the NBA since we saw things like uh the the inclusion of the play-in tournament, but I also think it goes back to the college basketball uh argument, which is I also think tanking is less relevant now because we don't have the kind of stars coming out of college basketball that we used to, where it was like, oh my God, we saw 3, 4, 2, 1 years of this guy just lighting it up in college. Like this guy could be the next one. This year again is an outlier because we have Wembenyama, but the past couple years it's been like, I mean, we live in Las Vegas. Like I remember the year where who was the one guy who got drafted number 1 overall by the from UNLV? What was his name?
Anthony Bennett.
Anthony Bennett. It was
He
like that year.
100% though. He should never have gotten picked number one
Well, he
overall.
literally got picked number 1 because there was like no other options. There was nobody else good coming out, and they were just
I
kind of
would.
like, I guess we'll pick him. And
He had
everybody,
he had asthma and he was overweight and he had back issues.
yeah. And all the analysis and draft guys were like, you have to pick him because there's nobody else, but I wouldn't pick him if I had the number 1 pick. So it's
I mean, it
like,
was kind of like Zion. It was kind of like the Zion situation with him. Like Zion's still good, but like he's overweight. It hurt. It's hard for him to play in the NBA. And yeah, that was kind of a thing with Bennett. He was just big one though was he had asthma, like
yeah.
bad
Well, at least with
sports asthma.
Zion, it was like there's potential for him to be a thing we've never seen before, right? Which is what the Wembenyama talk is, where it's like this guy. I'm sure you saw the viral clip of Wembenyama shooting the 3, and then it bounces off the rim. He gets his own rebound and then slam dunks it. And the collective basketball world went fucking crazy. Rightfully, they should because we've never seen something like that. But again, with a guy like Zion, he has a specific body type where it's like there's a lot of risk slash reward here where it's like Zion can be great when he's healthy and given the time to be great. We've seen it in the NBA. Only issue is he can't stay fucking healthy because of the body type and the type of play they do in the NBA, which is what Wembanyama is, right? The issue with him is he's so fucking tall. Scouts or his agent is literally lying to teams and saying he's shorter than he actually is because he's so tall that there's not a precedent for somebody being that tall and not just being injury prone and a mess. But that was a
Well, I
tangent
mean,
side note.
the wife was coming back in from her little detour today. You didn't mention Taco Fall, right?
Oh, well, I mean, that's
No,
a, yeah, I did
that's
not,
yeah.
but
I was gonna
that's a
say
great example. Yeah.
Taco Fall. I mean, you see him and you're like, oh my gosh, he's a Yao Ming kind of player. He's just gonna stand in front under the basket and just go bloop, bloop, bloop.
Yeah.
But you ever try to watch him walk or run down the court? He looks like a baby giraffe that was just born and he can't.
Yeah.
So
There's a point in the NBA where you're either too big or you're too tall, where it's just like the wear and tear is just gonna really fuck you
eat
up.
you.
But getting back to the playoffs,
Sorry.
now we'll no, we'll have another show, I believe. I think I just said before the So Tuesday is when the play-in starts, so we won't have another show. We'll have one after the play-in tournament has already happened, or no, game 3's on Friday, so we can talk about more the playoff seedings then when it's like set in stone. But at the moment, the West is wide open. Only in the West have really the Nuggets clinched the number 1 seed. Grizzlies, Kings, Suns. I think Suns are stuck in 4th, but Grizzlies, Kings could potentially switch. We just went through all the uh play-ins for the West. However, I do want to talk about the East because a game both you and I watched was Celtics Sixers, I believe on Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday, one of those days.
Yeah.
And
It
I believe it was
was
Tuesday.
Tuesday because I know who I watched it with at work with our regular. Yep,
Yeah.
it was Tuesday.
So that was a great game. Super concerning because Jaylen Brown was not in that game, and the Sixers literally had to have a monster performance for Embiid where he went for 50, and they barely pulled out a win. So I'm nervous about that. I looked up and I was just like, how many times have the Celtics and Sixers played this season? Because I feel like they really haven't played as much as I think they have. They've only played 4 times this season, which felt right to me because I feel like I haven't seen them really play against each other that much. So the Sixers this season, 1-3 against the Celtics, meaning the Celtics were 3-0 against the Sixers before that game. They barely lost, almost gave me a heart attack by winning at the end. Uh, the Sixers Bucks are 2-2, and then the Celtics are 2-1 against the Bucks. So I do think that when we get into the playoffs, the games or the matchups I'm looking forward to, I really want to see Cavaliers and Celtics because I think Cavaliers weirdly have the Celtics number. And then I want to see Heat Sixers because the Heat just fucking blew out the Sixers yesterday. But that might have been because it was one of those games where Miami needed it. Sixers they're just kind of stuck there waiting for the playoffs to happen. I don't really think, unless you're like a play-in tournament team right on the bubble, like the Mavericks, as we talked about earlier, I don't
Right.
really think the next 3 days really matters to most of these teams. And I don't think they have mattered for the past couple days because everybody's kind of just waiting for the playoffs to start. So I'm not going to put too much stock in the type of games that have been played for the past week because everybody in the East is kind of set in stone. Everybody in the West is within 1 or 2 games of each other, but there's tiebreakers, there's blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I just think the 3 teams I think are going to be the most interesting to watch in the playoffs, Casino. I do think it's the Sixers because they've been one of the best teams since November, but nobody kind of believes in them. And the Celtics and Bucks are better than them, but not by much. I don't know. And then you have the whole, is Embiid going to win MVP? I think he should, but my top 3 for MVP would be Embiid, Giannis, and then Joker for the Nuggets. So if any of those 3 guys win, I don't think you can really poo-poo it or like pick
Poo
somebody
poo.
like bullshit, blah
Uh,
blah blah. If anybody but those 3 wins, then you can be like, what the fuck is going on over here?
I hate you so much right now.
Uh,
You did the poo poo thing, and that
yeah,
is Rob Parker's poo poo. He
who is that?
you never listened to The Odd Couple with Chris Broussard and Rob Parker at all?
I do not. I do really
Now,
like Chris Broussard though.
I like Chris Broussard a lot. I don't like
I don't know
Rob
who Rob
Parker.
Parker is.
So he's his co-host on that part. And not that I don't like him. He sounds like a great person, like for like 2 people. He sounds very genuine all the time. He's doing nice things for everybody all the time. But I don't like his takes. He's a Tom Brady hater for no reason. He has just he's that like heel that is on the backside of what everybody knows or like knows is right or a player is good or this situation, a team,
So
blah blah.
he's a
He
sports radio host
yeah,
where
he's a
you
sports
have
radio
to
host.
be.
He for um oh my gosh, Fox Sports. I mean, their show's really good. I like it, but he always says poo poo, poo poo. Like that's his way of saying bad. and you said it just like
Huh,
him, so I thought that was a reference to him. Oh,
that was honestly not. That's how
sorry,
I
but
say
that was my tangent on that. We're good.
it.
I mean, everything that
But
I hear about him, he's an absolute phenomenal guy. So if he ends up listening to this, I think you're great, but I don't like your takes on Brady. That's all.
um, so the other two teams I'm
Sorry.
interested in, Casino, are both in the West. I think the Nuggets are have been the most consistent and best team in the West, but obviously they have what the Sixers do, which is we need to see you do something in the playoffs, right? Because we
That's been the
don't
question. Yep.
and they are potentially going to get matched against, like, if they go against the Lakers or the Warriors, two teams who always kind of turn it on in the playoffs. Like, there's going to be a ton of people, myself included, who might pick the Warriors or Lakers in a 5-7 game matchup against the number one seed in the West.
Well, it's
So
100% justifiable, man. I mean,
yeah,
there's the same thing with with NHL that we're going to get here too shortly. Is like Toronto Maple Leafs. That city can't get past the first or second round in playoffs, even though they're good teams, and even though they're a great team this year, it might be the same thing. So I totally get that where a team just can't get past the hump. So just like that, the Nuggets can't get past the hump. We were playing with that earlier. Sorry. They just can't get past the hump, and that's the Nuggets' big issue. That's Djokovic's issue. Can he get get into a second gear in the playoffs? And he hasn't been able to show that
yeah,
to
and that's
launch
also
his
the
team
Harden
forward.
issue. That's the Russell Westbrook issue.
Brook
It's
issue.
like a bunch of the
Well,
big stars in the NBA have always had those question marks. And this year we get to see if Joker or if Harden can maybe exercise some of those demons. The third team, I was going to say the Lakers, but I feel like now they're just everyone's picking the West. And could I see it? Yes, but I don't know if I'm that confident that they're going to just blow through the West and just get to the finals. I do, however, I'm really curious to see what the Kings do in the playoffs. They're one of the top three worst defensive teams in the league, but they're the number one offense in the league, averaging 121 points a game, which is
it's
fucking
crazy.
crazy.
I told you I forget that that's even a team.
That is that is an insane number to average in a league and with players, or with a team and with players that, like you said, most people, it's not even on their radar. Like, even the Kings being a top 3 team in the West this year, you don't really hear that much about them because, again, they're the Sacramento Kings, who have been a nothing burger for 25 years at this point, maybe 23, I believe. So yeah, but at the moment, the only teams, oh, they've actually moved up substantially in the defensive rankings, but yeah, they're still one of the bottom teams in defense, just team defense in the league. So I'm really curious to see Sixers, Nuggets, uh, Kings, and then obviously kind of Lakers a distant fourth. But that's pretty much it for NBA Casino. Let's move over to NHL,
Oh
which
man,
they're
I
about to
was
start their playoffs. I believe we
yeah.
discussed their season ends Monday 17th. So
Yeah,
yeah,
there's
take it
I
away from
think
here.
the Sabres have 5 games left, Avalanche have 5 games left, but one of those games for the Avalanche is a makeup game from the past with same with the Buffalo Sabres. They were supposed to play one back in October or something like that. That got moved all the way to the end of the season. Um, so pretty much the playoffs are set with teams. There's only 3 teams that have not 3 spots that have not been clinched. It is both of the wild cards for the East and one of the wild cards for the West that have not been clinched. Everybody else is there. Uh, but it is extremely tight. I was hoping coming into today that things would have started to spread out a little bit with 3 games to go, 4 games to go for some teams. But no, of course, there's still seeding that can just be completely thrown away or jumbled up here. Um,
Yeah.
the easiest one though is the Atlantic. That one's damn near set in stone. Bruins obviously are going to take the number 1 seed. 127 points, which remember I talked about. Let's discuss them real quick. I talked about that they were very close to being able to make this uh, have the most points in a single season in NHL history. I said the Maple
Yes.
Leafs was going to be one if they came out. So the next big one is the Devils. After that, it's smooth sailing. So if they win against the Devils, they're sitting golden. They only have to get 3 points of the next six, or 3 points of six, and then at last three games, and they win the record against the Flyers, Capitals, and Canadians, which are all lower in the league. So they win against the Devils after winning against the Maple Leafs. They're gonna win that. So I think they're gonna make it happen. Um, so then you have the Maple Leafs sitting second in that division,
Well,
Lightning
wait,
third. What's
before
up?
before we get off the Bruins, if you had to put all of your money on either Bruins or the Field at this moment before the playoffs start, would you still take Bruins?
Um, let's man. That's tough. If I'm gonna say Field. I'm
Oh,
gonna say Field.
interesting. Who do
Just
you think
be
in the East and then in the
there's there's
West
there's
has the
there's not gonna be
potential?
a blowout against the Bruins. It would go to a 7-game series.
Who do you think in the
Uh,
East? Give me one team in the East, one team in the West you feel like have the best potential to upset the Bruins.
to upset the Bruins?
Yes, in the playoffs. So if they're the
Mm.
favorite, it pretty much be one team in the East or one team in the West you think can beat them in the playoffs.
The easier ones can be in the East. I think the Canes. I think the Hurricanes can do it. They're sitting at 109 points, top of the Metro. I think the Canes could beat the Bruins. There's
Ooh.
also you have if the Bruins and Maple Leafs end up having to play each other. Bruins have had the Maple Leafs number for years and years and years. I really think that might be a thing. And then so the team in the West, oh man, um, it's crazy. The defending Stanley Cup champions, the Avs, they've been on rolling on a tear right now. The Stars, remember a while back, I picked them to be like the number one out of the West. They had some injuries recently that they've been trouble overcoming. Um, man, I still think if the Golden Knights can figure out their goaltending a little bit, Brossoit has played actually quite well. He works well under Bruce Cassidy's system. I still like the Golden Knights to beat the Bruins. Reason being is they split with them in the year, but the Golden Knights have played really well against the East this year, better than any team in the league on the West side, playing against the top four teams against in the East. I like their style of play. Bruce Cassidy has coached against those teams with the Bruins. He's taken the Bruins to the Stanley Cup. He's made the playoffs every season as a head coach over there. He knows how to play well against the East teams. I still like that. The Oilers are great, but the Oilers, somebody brought that up to me. Oh, the Oilers, they could beat the Bruins because their scoring is great. Yes, but their goaltending is really bad. And
Hmm.
you still have that offensive powerhouse of Boston. They can tic tac toe and score against you. It's very easy for them to do. The Kings' defense is good, but I don't think they have the same scoring power as the Bruins would. So I would either say the Knights if they can figure out their goaltending, but the Avs have definitely jumped in the Central, and they're currently leading the Central over the Stars. So that's where I could go with that. So going back over to like kind of the seeding right now, the top three of the Atlantic pretty much set. The top three in the Metropolitan, though, Rangers are pretty much they got that three spot locked in. They're multiple games behind the Devils. They're not going to catch them. Um, but the Canes, they do have a game in hand against the Devils, and they're up a point. So that one's pretty close to being set. Those top three as well: the Canes, Devils, Rangers. But this is where it's fun. As I said, both wild card spots for the East with 3-4 games to go have not been clinched yet. That's crazy.
Hmm.
So between the Panthers, Islanders, and Penguins, all of playing 79 games, they all have 3 games to go. Um, the Panthers and Islanders are tied at 89 points, and the Penguins are at 88 points. absolutely phenomenal. Wild finish coming here in the next 3 games, the next week and a half, less than a week and a half. No, week and a half. Yeah, it's in a week and a half. Nope, not week and a half, week, because it ends on the 15th. So yeah, it is absolutely wild on what that's going to happen. I don't know who's going to pick those last 2 spots up for the wild card in the East. Regardless, whichever teams make the wild card spots, the Bruins, the Canes, they're going to take care of them. It's not really going to be much of an issue for them. So that's going to be pretty much done. It'd be nice for their club to make the playoffs and to have to do a 7-game series that they get 4 extra games because they're probably going to get swept. So that's what it is. And then now over on the West, that's where it's even more wild. Yes, you have 7 of the 8 spots locked up, and you have the 1 wild card. We'll start there that is still up for grabs. The Jets, the Flames, and the Predators are all fighting for that last spot. So I know you and I are Golden Knights fans. The Predators game didn't go kind of how we wanted it to, but the Preds are fighting for a playoff spot. The Predators have 89 points with a game in hand to the Flames, but the Jets also have a game in hand against the Flames, but they're both sitting at 89 points. So again, separated by 1. There is a little bit of a difference on, a 1-game difference, but that is pretty difficult to tell who's going to come out of that because they've all been playing really strong towards the end of the season. Each last team, those 3 teams, 6-4, 6-3-1, 5-5. So they're at least 500. The Kraken, they are the number 1 seed, number 1 wild card. Rephrase that. They have that locked up. There's no chance that they're going to get into the top of the Pacific. There is a chance, but with how the Oilers, Kings, and Knights have been playing, there's just no way. So we'll start there. Golden Knights, they did beat the Kings, which was the big circle game for the last month with how well the Kings have been playing since the All-Star break, and the Knights. The Knights have been just on an absolute tear, but Kings have not let them get away. And then the Oilers crept in by just absolutely dominating teams with high-scoring performances. So the Knights are sitting up there with 106. Oilers got 103, and the Kings are at 100. All of them have played 79 games, meaning they have 3 games left. Not worried about the Kings anymore as a Knights fan because of that matchup that they had the other day or last night. The Oilers, still a game and a half up on them. So we'll see. I think the Knights are going to end up taking that number 1 seed. Things kind of played off nice there. However, in the Central, you still have that number 1 seed up for grabs. The Avalanche and the Stars are both at 100 points. I think the Avs are going to take it. Like I said, the Stars are a little injury prone right now. Been taking a few hits. The Avs, they still have 5 games to go. They still have 5 games to go. Plus, they have that makeup game that they'll be playing the last day of the season in a week from now. So yeah, I think the Avs are going to wrap up number 1 in the Central, beat out on the Stars, beat out on the Wild, but you never know. They're only separated by 2 points, those 3 teams. So the seeding is really tough to kind of say who's going to play what in the first matchup. But especially over in the West, kind of like the West in the NBA. It's kind of where we're sitting with that.
Yeah. Anything else
I don't know on the NHL? No. Again, it's so tough to talk about the NHL when I don't know who's going to be where. With 3 games to go, 4 games to go, there is still a potential that there's still the potential of like 10 different seed changes in the last 3 games, roughly. It's absolutely
I'll tell you
insane.
what.
So, I don't know.
We picked a great sports year to start a podcast with how good the NFL was, and then now with the NBA and NHL just coming down basically to the wire for basically every team, seeding or not really a great team, I guess. In the NHL, the Bruins are a great team, but like
Mhm.
everybody kind of just feeling
But
like
I can
they're
see
in the
them being
mix.
upset.
Yeah. Yeah. But we were going to talk about the Masters. Do you want to do a quick, like, 2-minute rundown of
Uh,
interesting shit from the Masters casino?
yeah, I mean, there's not too much about it. So the Masters, my kids, happy birthday, birthday today, and the last few things with the Masters. I'm gonna pull it up here. Let you know where everybody is currently. Why is it being dumb? So Brooks Koepka, um, currently he's finished for the day. He went -5 for the day. He's sitting at -12, which is 3 above John Ram, who's -9, but he's only through 9. The big thing is though today there's been a rain delay. They started again, rain delay again. That's where it's
Ugh.
less left off. Um, I think they're going to have to do it where they push back and they'll have to finish. The Masters will actually end on Monday. They'll have to continue the second round tomorrow. Um, so where I'm kind of looking is last I saw is the cut is at +2 projected cut line. For those of you who don't know, that means everybody that is +3 or lower, because in golf it's different. The higher plus you are means you're doing worse off. The lower you are, you're doing good. So +3 on is going to be cut. Currently, Tiger Woods is tied for 50th at +2. He's through 11 today. So he's right there on the cusp. I know everybody wants to know about Tiger, so throwing that out there. But Brooks Koepka, he's been looking fantastic today. Like I said, yesterday he posted a 7 under. Today he's posting a 5 under, or he posted a 5 under, which 2 really good days playing in Augusta. The fun one that I like to talk about is Kistner, Kevin Kistner, one of the golfers in the par 3 contest earlier this week. Just a fun little tidbit on that. They do a par 3 contest on one of the last holes in the Masters. It's a par 3 that's famous, and they always do a par 3 contest. Beautiful shot, lands behind the hole, starts to roll back, and it lips out. It lips out of the hole, and he missed his hole in one on that. Grabs his hat, throws it on the ground, and the fun thing they do with this is like if you have kids and whatnot, like they put them in like the caddy family that wants to be there, put them in caddy uniforms. And so the kid goes out there with his little plastic putter and puts it in. And then when he makes the putt, he throws his putter down in frustration. So it's father like son, which is pretty solid. I found it absolutely hysterical. Yeah, my dog going off.
Yeah. So last thing we're going to talk about today, it was really big news in the world of sports as well that's kind of being like underreported, because it's kind of one of those things where, like, what does it mean? Which is the company Endeavor has purchased the WWE, which they already own the UFC. So now the UFC, WWE are under the same roof, and they're kind of being packaged as like the best in combat sports, the best in combat entertainment, which obviously WWE is a scripted. I hate the word fake because those guys really do get like fucked up in wrestling, but they are a now sports entertainment slash combat sports entity. And I don't know, just what I think this means. Well, first off, what this means is the WWE was valued at over $9 billion, which is fucking insane. But they were valued at over $9 billion. Vince McMahon is back. As of Monday night, there's reports that he is now back as head of creative, which is a job he hasn't held for about a year
Yeah,
because
and guess what?
of
It's gotten better.
no.
I'm sorry.
Guess what? happened on Monday was they had a 3-hour show with a total of 33 minutes of actual wrestling on it. So on a wrestling show that lasts 3 hours, they had 33 minutes of wrestling on it, which is a departure from when Triple H, his real life son-in-law, was in charge of creative, and there was like 2 hours of wrestling per show. So now the rumors and speculation and things flying out of there is, will Triple H be leaving the company? His real life wife, Stephanie McMahon, the real life daughter of Vince McMahon, already left the company. His real life son, Shane McMahon, left the company. So will his son-in-law, who was basically running the creative side of WWE for the past year, it had never been a better product since, the Attitude Era in terms of ticket, merchandise, television ratings, fans being like, this is a really good show. The crazy thing is, you had WrestleMania, which is their big Super Bowl event on Saturday and Sunday. The Saturday show, absolutely fantastic. The main event of Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn versus the Usos, what it was, the epitome of what makes wrestling great, which is storyline, bad guys you hate, good guys you love. You want to see the bad guys lose. You want to see the good guys win. You want to see a moment. I'm not afraid to admit it. The end of that show had me crying like a little bitch. It was a great moment, great
Doesn't take much
culmination
though
of a
for
story.
you.
I mean, that's not saying much because I cry at everything, but that was how effective. I've cried very few times. I cry a lot in movies. I've cried very few times in wrestling. I think only like 3 times. This was one of the times. Just great moment. And then night 2 was fucking weird. They had some weird choices, and all the match results, like most of them felt like, really? That guy was the one
So
they
are we going to
chose?
run through the matches and you're going to let me know what I did right and wrong off of random picks?
Well, I think so. I don't think I wrote down all of them. You said
Nah, it's all good.
I actually think you won because you picked the only ones we picked differently. Yeah, you won. So, way to go,
I'll take
casino.
that.
You picked Roman Reigns to win, and I was like, no way, Cody Rhodes. It's the story's been leading that way, and then Roman Reigns did in fact win. So that one, you picked Brock Lesnar winning. Yeah, all these picks, you actually won the WWE pick. But
All right.
last note on the actual UFC and WWE merger is, I've been reading a bunch of stuff and listening to a lot of videos about it, and they say these type of business deals, you don't really see fundamental changes to, the product or how it's advertised or anything like that for up to 2 years. So this is definitely a long burn storyline, right? A slow burn storyline that's going to take a long time to kind of pan out. But funny enough, the only one who benefits from this appears to be the board of directors and Vince McMahon himself. Same thing that happened with UFC, where all the UFC board and bigwigs and owners and CEOs and CFOs and all that kind of stuff, all of them got rich. And then coincidentally, all the fighters started being paid way less and not making making shit in money. So interesting to see how that pans out in WWE, because the shareholders, board members, Vince McMahon himself have all gotten filthy rich from this deal. Haven't really heard anything from the talent, except they're all, from reports, most of them are kind of pissed off because obviously Vince
That's
McMahon
fair.
has his
That's why
favorites.
AEW is better.
Yeah. Well, and then AEW's on the side of this kind of being like, now does this entity over here become the stomping grounds for all the wrestlers who are like, fuck what's happening with the corporatization of the WWE. Now does AEW start landing bigger names? There's
I mean, they've already
report
landed a
that,
lot of big names.
Well, yeah. And there's a report that somebody like Drew McIntyre apparently can't come to an agreement on a new deal. So if he went to AEW, that'd be a huge signing for them. And yeah, the wrestling wars are heating up when there's really not a war because WWE was valued at almost $10 billion, which is fucking insane. That's an insane number. But they're about to get cable rights, cable deal. I just don't want the big thing to come out of this. I don't want the wrestlers to be screwed, and I don't want to be paying $80 again for wrestling pay-per-views
It's gonna happen.
on ESPN Plus. Oh, it's definitely going to happen. And this is the sign right here that it is.
My sign was a half hour ago.
Yeah. So he's whispering a secret in my ear. This has been the Only Sports Podcast. I'm Will. That's Casino over there.
Hi.
This is my young child.
Mine's over here.
Yeah. Have a happy Easter, and yeah, we'll see you next week to talk about the play-in games, talk about the NHL playoffs finally being set in terms of standing, and yeah, all right, adios, Casino.
Bye.
That's you.
Yeah.
That's you. That's you.
That is